Welcome everyone to Exploring Judaism. Here, waiting for our attendees to arrive. Let's see, it looks like Mitch and Jean and David and Kristen are here. If you can hear me, pop something over in the chat so that I can tell that you can hear me. You should see the chat on the right-hand side of your screen. And Brandon's here. I'm going to invite Brandon to be a presenter with us. Hi, Brandon.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Let me get everyone else in here. I'm going to invite everyone so you can speak along with us. If you don't want to, you can just deny that invitation. You'll still be able to listen and hear what we're doing. How's Vegas, Brandon?
Warm.
Warm, huh?
It's a chilly, about 101 today. So.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, it could be worse, but we had a stretch of 110 plus, so.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah.
Insane.
Oh.
All right. So I don't know. Let's see who else is here. John just joined. Hi, John. Who's there? Brandon, you just join us? Brandon, is that you?
Yep, still here.
No, not you. Sorry.
Oh,
John, I meant. John, is that you? John, can you hear me? John!
Are you talking? I'm on John. This is David. I'm on Jonathan's account.
Oh, David, I'm sorry.
David Kristen, I'm on Jonathan.
Now I can. All right, David and Kristen, I'm sorry. How you doing?
No.
Say hi to Brandon. He's out in Las Vegas today.
Hey, Brandon, how are you?
Actually,
hi, how are you?
not just today. A lot, actually.
All right.
Let's see. Who else? Jean. Jean is with us. I'm going to see if he wants to join in as a presenter also. If not, he can just listen in. All right. So you guys all doing well?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Awesome.
How was the end of your summer? How was the rest of your summer?
It was good. It's been a good summer. Hi, Jean. Or Mitchell. I'm sorry. Hi, Mitchell.
Hi, Rabbi. How are you?
I'm well. How are you doing?
Good, thanks.
And Jonathan is here, too. Who's Jonathan?
That's me, David. It's Jonathan, it's David.
No, but you're on. I got you on here twice. You're logged in twice.
Oh, that's weird.
You're special. Wow.
Yeah.
All right, so we got David, Kristen, Brandon, Mitchell, and Jonathan the Ghost. Okay.
Yeah, and I go by Mitch, but it doesn't. Either one's fine.
Mitch, I'm sorry.
No worries.
Mitch. Okay. So Mitch, this is Brandon. Oh, now someone else is with us. Who is this? Who is the Ramako shirt on, or Bamako?
That's Jonathan.
Hi, Jonathan. I knew there was a Jonathan.
Yeah, I'm technically limited, so I'm over here hitting buttons and trying to get the camera on.
Jonathan, where are you from?
I live in Palm Beach, Florida.
Awesome. So do I.
Palm Beach Gardens.
Awesome. So let's just really quickly introduce ourselves, and then we'll just jump right in. So, Jean, you're on my. You just muted yourself, and Brandon muted himself. So, Jonathan, just tell us who you are, about yourself, what you're looking for, what you're hoping to learn.
Okay, so I've been down in Palm Beach Gardens, Palm Beach area for about 4 or 5 years. I have my wife who is not Jewish. We have an 18-month-old son, 19-month-old son. I grew up myself in a mixed household in Queens, New York, and New Jersey, identifying more ethnically as Jewish, but not. I wasn't bar mitzvahed, and we didn't go through any formal. We celebrate all the holidays, and I went to temple on the high holidays, but I just wanted to reconnect and take a more formal approach to learning.
Awesome. What's your 18-month-old's name?
Callum?
Say again?
Callum. C-A-L-U-M.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Welcome. Good to have you here.
Thanks.
Mitchell, you want to say hi? Mitch.
Sure. Yeah, I live in Jupiter and joined the synagogue about 6 months ago, basically because I came to a service rabbi and really enjoyed it and felt the joy that you and the cantor bring to the service and kind of felt at home. So I've really been, I haven't been coming to synagogue regularly for many years.
Really?
Other than the high holidays. And
Yeah.
my wife and I live here. We have 3 kids, all of whom are either in grad school or college. And so there's a lot of flexible and time. And I'm also trying to reconnect. I'm also from New Jersey originally, from Morris County. And we've been here for about 4 years and feel like I'm finding a home at the synagogue. When I saw that you were doing this, I thought this looked like it'd be a really interesting way to expand my connection.
That's great. It's been so wonderful seeing you and celebrating with you. It's been awesome. Fantastic. David and Kristen, you want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. So, hey everyone, it's David and Kristen. We're common theme. We're from up north as well, from New York. We live in Palm Beach Gardens now. I come from an Israeli background, an Israeli household, and Kristen is not Jewish. We just got engaged a few months ago. We're getting married next year. Thank you. And looking to learn Judaism a little more and experience, share it with my fiance, and learn all about it.
Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. And our last guest, Brandon, has perhaps a similar story.
Yeah, very similar. I grew up in a sort of non-religious tradition, and as you might say, I met a nice Jewish girl, and I wanted to connect with her, and sort of like I tell the rabbi, she sort of led me to Judaism, and so we're getting married in 299 days, and
But who's counting?
but who's counting? And
We're 194. We're 194 Mazel tov.
And so yeah, I wanted to really finish going through my conversion process, even when my work took me to Las Vegas, away from the Treasure Coast, and so wanted to continue, and so this was a great way to do it.
Do you want to tell us what your work is, only because it's kind of cool?
Well, so I'm in Nevada right now, working on the presidential caucuses. Work for Hillary Clinton's campaign for president.
Cool.
Even if you're not a Democrat, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Kind of cool. Yeah. I just got in a lot of trouble actually because my last weekly video was I was talking about the latest PPP poll that said that a majority of a certain party think that Barack Obama was not born in America. And I was not commenting on the party, I was commenting on the PPP poll, but I got in a lot of trouble for getting political, so I'll stay out of that. So my name is David, and I'm here, I live in Jupiter, but I'm here in Palm Beach Gardens at the temple, and I've been a rabbi now for 17, 18 years, but I've been serving as a rabbi for 20 years. For the first 17 of those years, I've been up in first 18 of those years, rather, I was up in Canton, Massachusetts, at a temple called Temple Beth Abraham. I get them all mixed up, and now I'm here at Temple Beth David. So before we get started, just a quick house cleaning. I don't know why I just got really dark on the screen, but so I use Google Hangouts all the time, but the particular overlay that I'm using called Webinar Jam, which is, hopefully you guys got emails reminding you of tonight and stuff. This is kind of new to me, so if I screw it up, you'll forgive me. But I'm going to try to not do that. So let's get started. So hopefully you all were able to access the syllabus that I sent around. And what I tried to do is make it an interactive syllabus. So that is to say, if there are articles and things that relate to what we're going to talk about, that you can just click on it and it'll take you right to that article or that video. So today we'll watch at least one of those two videos together. Before the last thing I want to say is that I don't want to talk the whole time. So please interrupt, question, challenge. Yisrael, the Hebrew word for Israel, for Jews, means the wrestlers with God. So I'm absolutely not God. And if you can wrestle with God, you can definitely wrestle with me. So please interrupt and participate with me. That's why I made you all co-presenters with me, so that we can really have a conversation. All right. So I figured that the best place to start was to talk about big ideas. And what I mean by this is when I'm in education, when you're crafting a lesson plan, really the question that you want to start with, the place you want to start is, what are the big ideas? What are the essential questions, the big ideas that I want to get across? So when I was putting this together, I said to myself, what are the big ideas of Judaism? What is sort of the essential, enduring understanding that Judaism offers to the world? And at the end of the day, it comes down to that one line that I think probably many of you know already: Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord Adonai, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. This is a verse from the book of Deuteronomy, the book of Devarim in Hebrew. It's from the 6th chapter, I think, verse 4. And in so many ways, this is kind of the big idea of Judaism. One thing I should say, by the way, is that we're going to talk a lot about Bible, and we're going to talk a lot about rabbinical Judaism and modern Judaism. In some ways, when I say Jews or Judaism, I'm talking about all the way back to Abraham from the Bible. That's not actually technically correct, because Abraham was not really the first Jew. He was the first Israelite. There was a real shift in what Judaism meant about 2,000 years ago, and we'll talk about that later on in the year. So I'll probably use Judaism to talk both about the entire span from Abraham up until today, but then later on, when we get a little more technical, I'll talk just about what Judaism became in the 1st century CE. But for our purposes right now, Abraham, what made him stand out, the reason we call him the first Jew or the first Israelite, is because he bought into this idea of monotheism, that there's only one God. And there's a great story about Abraham and his dad. So Abraham's dad, Terach, was an idol. He had owned an idol shop. This is the story, right? And so he sold all different kinds of idols. And one day, Abraham's dad said to Abraham, "Hey, I'm going to run to the market and grab some milk. Can you please watch the idol shop?" So Abram said, "Sure, I'll watch the idol shop." And he's sitting there watching the idol shop, and there are big idols and there are small idols, and this woman comes in with a platter of food that she wants to offer as a gift to the idols. And Abram looks at her and says, "You've got to be out of your mind. You've got to be kidding me. These things are made of stone. What are they going to do with all this food? They can't eat this food. That's absurd." The woman got so upset she stormed out, but she left the platter of food there. So what does Abraham do? He takes a stick and he beats the crap out of all of the idols. He destroys them. He smashes them to bits, except for the biggest one. The biggest one, he takes the stick, he puts it in the biggest one's hand, and he puts the platter of food right beneath it. Well, his dad comes home, Terach comes home, and says, "Oh my God, what happened to my shop?" And Abraham said, "He did it." And he pointed to the big idol. And Abraham's dad said, "He did it? He's made out of stone. He can't do anything. What do you mean he did it?" And Abraham said, "Aha! Why are you believing in and selling these idols if you yourself know that they can't do anything? This is pointless." And with that, Abraham set out. He left his home. This is in the 3rd Torah portion that we read. That story isn't, but when Abraham sets out on his own, it's in the 3rd Torah portion in the entire Bible, in the entire Torah. And Abraham sets out, leaves his home, and really begins the whole idea of the Jewish people, or of modern theology and modern religion, by believing in just one God. And that idea, that essential idea, is so central to who we are as Jews that we're commanded to say the Shema, which is the watchword of our people, and it's the affirmation of that truth that we believe in only one God. We say it in the morning when we wake up. It's the last thing we say before we go to bed, and we also say it a couple of times during the day. It's a very powerful idea that there's really only one God. Now, one thing that's important, by the way, if any of you ever decide to dive into Bible study more deeply, what you'll actually find is that saying there's one God is not the whole story. Because actually there are lots of gods, or demigods, if you want to call them that, or powerful beings. The idea that there's one God is not so much to say that there's one singular God, but instead that there's one unique God. There's one God who stands above. On Friday nights we sing this song called Shalom Aleichem, and we say that God is the Melech Malchei HaMlachim, the King of the Kings. Right? So it's not that there aren't other divine beings. There are. In fact, when God made the first person, Adam, God says, let us make man. Na'aseh Adam, which is the Hebrew for let us, which is plural. Let us make man in our image. Let us make this human being in our image. And of course the question is, who's God talking to? Nothing else is created yet. Is God talking to the animals? Okay, maybe. But a lot of the commentators say that God was actually talking to the other celestial beings, or maybe the angels. So, and we actually have a lot of battles sometimes between these different gods. There's Gog and Magog, and you've probably heard of Satan or Satan, right? So Satan is sort of a demigod in the Bible. He's maybe a fallen angel, if you will, but he has a lot of power, and God battles him a lot. So the idea that we have one God is so much more than just a singular God. It's about God being unique, singular, whole, and also, and this is where it really gets kind of cool and mystical, the idea that if God is one, and if everything is God, then everything is one, right? So if we believe that God is one, and if we believe that everything is a part of God, then that means that we are all part of one living organism, if you will. When I was in college, I took a class on peace and conflict resolution, and we studied the Gaia, G-A-I-A, I think it's called, Gaia. This idea that the entire universe is a living organism, that we're all a piece of it. Gaia is another word to me for God. That the oneness of God is a oneness that we yearn for also. It's a oneness that we want to be a part of and see ourselves as perhaps being able to be a part of. So how do we know that this one God exists? How do we know that any of this is true? We don't. We don't. And that's really important to say at the outset. Judaism and religion is not science. We don't ask the question, how did this happen? Last night, my daughter's becoming a bat mitzvah in a few weeks, and so last night we were doing some study together about her Torah portion. Her Torah portion is Noah, and we read this commentary about, at the end of the Torah portion of Noah, it talks about the Tower of Babel, or the Tower of Babel. Have you guys heard that story? Right? All these people are building this tower, they want to reach the heavens, and God disperses them and changes all of their languages. So we're reading the story, and one of the commentators said that the reason they were building this tower is that they wanted to take axes and pierce the heavens to drain the water from the heavens. If you remember from the creation story, God, on the second day, God separated the waters. God put waters below and waters above. The waters above are what we call heaven. And then God put like a divider, I don't know, saran wrap to hold up the waters above, right, so they wouldn't come crashing down. And so this commentator said that what the people at Bavel were doing is they were climbing the mountain and building a mountain so they could actually put a hole in that divider so the water would drain out, because they were terrified that if there was water up there that God would flood the earth again. And Ayelet, my daughter, turned to me and she said, how do we know that God actually put the waters up there? Is any of this true? And my answer to her was, We don't know. We don't know if that's how God created the world. And in fact, we don't even ask that question. The question we ask is, why? We have this story that says that God put the waters up there and the waters down here, and that the people built the tower and this happened in the ark and all. And the question is not how did it happen as much as why did it happen? Why do we have these stories? Why have these stories, why have these beliefs endured for thousands of years? And so my job is not to prove to anyone what I believe, because I can't. It's not science. I love watching Bill Maher, and I love how frustrated he gets with religious people, because he keeps fighting science against religion, but they can't fight. They're not they're apples and they're not even apples, they're Brussels sprouts and oranges. They're completely different sciences, if you will, completely different approaches to asking questions about the world. So I always speak as if these things actually happened, but don't take me wrong, the world was not created in 7 days, and I know that. At least that's not how it was created. Why? The Torah.
Rabbi,
Please, go ahead.
Wouldn't you think that there's some reason why these particular stories were comforting to the people who told them, or somehow connected with the people who told them years ago in a way that it must have some connection to something, right? Or there must be as you say, why these stories, but there must be some basis for them.
Sure. Well, I would actually suggest that there are probably two bases for them. When we talk about the holidays, by the way, you'll find this with holidays too. There are always two foundations upon which the holidays exist. There's the historical basis, and then there's the spiritual basis. For example, Hanukkah. I'll just give you a quick one. The story, the holiday of Hanukkah. So, what's the miracle of Hanukkah that you guys know about?
The candle burned.
The candle, right? The oil lasted for 8 days. Yeah, that's bogus. It never happened. The rabbis pulled that one right out of their tuchas. That story about the candles, the oil lasting for 8 days, that was written 600 years after the Maccabees ever lived. Right? The historical story of Hanukkah is that they were in a huge war. They didn't have time to celebrate the holiday of Sukkot when it was supposed to be celebrated, the 8-day holiday of Sukkot, and so they celebrated it after the war was over in what we now call Hanukkah, which is also an 8-day celebration. That's the historical reason. The spiritual reason is because the oil lasted for 8 days. Right? And I didn't mean to suggest that the oil lasting for 8 days is complete bogus. I mean, it's a beautiful story, and there's a lot to learn from it. But we do have these two reasons for the holidays, and I think we probably have multiple reasons, at least two, for why these stories survived. And one of the reasons I think is purely, I think it's sort of the essence of what religion is about. You know, religion for me, and please, if you disagree, chime in. Religion for me is all about answering questions for which there are no answers, I guess, or trying to understand or comprehend, or maybe even just ask more clearly questions that are so difficult to ask. Where did we come from? Why are we here? Where are we going? That's the stuff of religion to me. And so I think that creating a narrative that helps us ask those questions and maybe even offers some answers or some insights, that's incredibly comforting. You know, for me, religion is, it more than anything, it's comforting. It tells me that the world is not chaotic. It tells me that things don't just happen for no reason. It tells me that God has a plan. I don't understand the plan. Sometimes I don't even like the plan. But knowing that there's a plan, knowing that there's that it's not chaos, that's comforting to me. So I think one reason that these stories may have lasted is because they were the ones that spoke to the people and fed their need to find meaning and purpose in the world. I would like to think also, though, that although I believe that these stories from the Bible were written by human beings, I don't think that they are created by human beings. And what I mean by that is my understanding is, and this is actually a great transition because this is the next thing I want to talk about, is I believe that God speaks through us. And we're sort of a filter for God's voice and God's action in the world, actually. God comes through us. We are God's hands and heart and mouths and eyes. And the problem with a filter is that not everything gets through. And very often, the sort of the very light, airy, the less, I don't know how to say it, the less formative stuff, gets through, and the rest kind of bunches up there, and it doesn't get through properly. The whole message, the whole whatever you're putting into the funnel, doesn't get through. And I think that that's what happened here. I think God speaks to us and spoke to the people who wrote the Bible, and then they tried to put that out. They tried to write it down. They tried to create a document that was reflective of what they had received. But because we're human, God kind of cruffed it up in the process. And so we have a lot of things in the Bible that are really kind of ugly, actually. There's a lot of war. There's a lot of bloodshed. There's a lot of hatred in the Bible. And so this document, this text that is supposed to inspire us is really a very challenging text. And our job, I think, is to read it very, very carefully, not discard the stuff we don't like, because it's part of it. We can't get rid of that. But to look very, very deeply into the stories and into the text and into our faith to see where is God in this, because I think that God is in there. In fact, I know God is in there. I know God is in there. I believe with all my heart that God is in these texts and in our faith and in our traditions and in our customs. It's our job, though, to kind of, I don't know if you want to say open up the funnel a little more or wipe away the dust. It's been kind of crudded over, God has been by our humanity. And we're not bad for that. That's just who we are. That's what happens. So I'd like to think that the reason that these stories have had the staying power that they've had is because maybe these are some of that truest expression of God. That perhaps these are the stories that really stood the test of time because they were inspired by God, I think. So let's, before we go on, actually, let's, I want to show you a quick video. I have no idea if this is going to work. This is because we talked about how we can never prove faith, never prove the existence of God. So this is Dr. Gerald Schroeder. He's an amazing guy, and he's going to try and prove to us that God exists. So I'm going to see if this works. I'm hoping it does. If it doesn't work, someone yell and scream, and I'll try it a different way.
Not working.
Can you hear it?
No.
No. No, it seemed to come up with a picture, but nothing, no movement.
Okay, fine. Hold on a second. I'm going to do it a different way. Okay, I have a different way. No worries. Here we go. Bear with me here. Okay. All right. Do you all see a little video pop up now?
No.
It looks like we have to give permission to use YouTube.
Yeah, if you give permission to use YouTube, then you'll be able to see that. You should have a little pop-up that says...
Oh, yeah, something came.
Mine disappeared.
Yeah, it just popped up saying like YouTube, like the app was being added, but it didn't say like permission to like click or anything.
So if you go on the left-hand side of your screen...
Uh-huh. You went on mute.
Yeah, I know. If you go on the left-hand side of your screens, there is a whole bunch of icons, and there should be a YouTube icon there. If there isn't, you can click on the three little dots, and you should see it over there.
I've got the window. I can share my screen, I guess.
Okay, yeah, I'm in it now too. So yeah, you got to click the YouTube, and then it'll allow you to hit OK. Then
so can everyone see it? Okay. No, Brandon, you can't see it. So
No, I don't seem to see the three dots, the additional dots. I just have chat, screen share, and showcase.
All right. So I tell you what, don't worry about it. I'm going to I will pull it up in a different, I'll just share my screen with you also. Give me 1 second. Okay. I'm going to share, so share my screen. I'm going to share this one. All right, so you all should see. Do you all see the video now?
Yeah.
Yep.
I do see that.
Great. So I'm going to blow it up to the full screen. Can you see it full screen now?
Yes.
Great. All right, here we go. Hold on, I got to turn this off. Sorry. Okay. That's kind of freaky. All right, ready? Here we go.
Can you guys hear anything? Because I can't.
Yeah, I'm not hearing anything. I see the picture, but I can't hear anything.
You can't hear it?
No.
Could not hear.
Well, that's frustrating. Wonder why. Let me try the YouTube thing again, see if that works. You all should get a pop-up. Hold on 1 second. Because you should be able to hear that then.
Yeah, well, you sent it before. I got a link, or I got something. I could just click the play button, and it was playing fine.
Yeah, me too.
So don't click play, because if I press play, then everyone will be able to see it together. So,
Okay, cool.
Does everyone have a YouTube thing up?
No.
No.
Can you restart it?
Brandon, you stink. It's all Brandon's fault. Brandon, on the left-hand side of your screen, you see a bunch of icons?
Yeah, I see three again. I still see the same chat, screen share, and showcase.
Right. So are there three little dots below that?
And there are not.
Roll your mouse over to that side of the screen. It might, because it hides sometimes.
Okay. No joy.
Well, let me play it and see if you can
Okay,
see if you can hear it, because there's nothing to watch anyway. So let's see if we can all hear this, okay?
Okay.
All right. We won't watch it. That's okay. Sorry about that.
No problem.
It's all Brendan's fault. Well, so I'll just tell you what he said. You all can watch it on your own. It's on the syllabus. But he argues that, and by the way, he's written some amazing books. He wrote God and the Big Bang. He wrote The Science of God. And he actually argues the opposite. He argues that science proves the existence of God, and that he has all these mathematical equations that I don't understand to prove that the first day actually equaled 200 billion or 2 billion years. The second day of creation equaled 1 billion years. It's this whole big thing. He takes a completely different approach. But for our purposes, or at least what I would like to share with you, is that science and religion are really completely different ideas, with perhaps one exception. And that gets us to what happens at Sinai. I'm jumping around a little bit. So how do we know that this is true? How do we know that God exists? How do we know that God is one? How do we know these essential teachings of Judaism? So in the 19th chapter of the book of Exodus, we have the story of Sinai. what have you heard about Sinai or Revelation? Have any of you heard anything about it? Have you heard stories about it? Jonathan, anything you want to chime in here? What did you learn? Like, did you go to Hebrew school? What did you learn?
I mean, nothing firsthand.
Nothing firsthand. Okay.
I went to Hebrew school. I don't remember I don't ever remember hearing about it.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
All right, Brandon. What about you?
All I've got is Charlton Heston and
Yes.
and a classic cinema.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So this is when Moses or Charlton goes up the mountain. He gets the Ten Commandments and he brings them back down. And he smashes them. Right. That whole story.
I was just thinking of Mel Brooks.
What did you say?
I was just thinking of Mel Brooks.
Mel Brooks. Right. Wait. 15. 10 Commandments. Right. Exactly. So there's actually a little bit more to the story than what the movies portray, although they're not far off. So the real power of that story actually has nothing to do with the Ten Commandments. So let me just really quickly walk through the story. So the Israelites are in Egypt. After 10 plagues, they get out of Egypt. They go actually the wrong way. Honestly, they don't go directly up toward Israel. They go kind of a roundabout route, and they hit Mount Sinai. And at Mount Sinai, there's this preparatory period of 3 days when God says, "Listen, I'm going to reveal myself to you, and so you have to get ready. So you have to wash your clothes, you have to clean your clothes, you have to do this. Don't come too close to the mountain." There's this whole 3 days of preparation, and then God reveals God's self. And the Bible is really weird about how it describes this. It says that Vayiru et ha'am, Vayiru ha'am et ha'kolot ve'et ha'lapidim, that the people, all the Israelites, saw the voices. How do you see voices, right? So this is, of course, a really cool thing that the rabbis were able to jump on and try and understand. So they talk about synesthesia. Synesthesia is a real thing. I didn't make it up. Synesthesia is when your senses get all mixed up. So you smell color or you taste sound. And they argue that what happened at Mount Sinai was synesthesia, and that the senses it was such a massive event that the senses got all mixed up and the people actually saw the voice of God. The problem with the voice of God is that it's really powerful. I mean, after all, this is the creator of the universe. And the people couldn't handle it. It was too much for them. And they say to Moses, "We can't do this. We cannot hear God's voice. You hear God's voice, and then you be God's mouthpiece. You be the intermediary for us." And so after the first commandment is spoken, God tells the rest of them to Moses, and then Moses relays them to the people. After that revelation moment, that's when Moses goes up into the mountain, gets the Ten Commandments, comes back down. He sees the golden calf. The tablets are smashed. He goes back up, gets another set of tablets, comes back down again. To me, the real power and the moment that sort of solidifies us as a people and our beliefs in one God is not the Ten Commandments. It's that moment when God speaks to everyone. The second video that I put in the syllabus talks about this a little bit, and it talks about how with Muhammad, for example, Muhammad became a prophet because people believed that he had had an experience. Jesus became the Son of God, or a prophet in Christianity, or God's self in Christianity, because a small group of people believed in him as a God, or as a prophet, or as a teacher. The difference with Jews is that our tradition says it wasn't one person or even a few people. It was everyone. Every Jew was at Mount Sinai, according to Jewish tradition. Not just the ones who were living at the time, but you and me. Now, we don't remember being there, but there are lots of things that have happened in your life that you don't remember. That doesn't mean you weren't there. You were all there when you were born. You don't remember that, though, do you? Right? That doesn't mean you weren't there. And so the idea is that every single Jewish soul was at Mount Sinai, and we all collectively heard or saw God or God's voice. God revealed God's self to every single one of us. And that's why, according to Jewish tradition, this story and our beliefs have sustained for so many years, because this isn't one person that has handed down a story. This isn't a few people that have kept this story alive. This is all of us. This is everyone. This is a shared experience that we had with God, and it's also it's something else that it wasn't just an experience. It was the beginning of a relationship. It was the beginning of a covenant, and that's actually a really important, not so much a distinction, because I think lots of religions could say this about themselves. Even more so, I would say it's true for Jews. Judaism is much less about being a religion as it is about being in a relationship. We believe that we're in a relationship with God. And I don't mean, God is our king and we are God's servants. I mean we're literally in a relationship. Like, we're married to God. There are lots of Jewish texts that talk about how we are married to God. When we stand in the sukkah on the holiday of Sukkot, that's our chuppah. Right? That's our canopy, our wedding canopy. In fact, there's a story that Mount Sinai, there are actually two versions of the story, that when we're at Mount Sinai, that God picked the mountain up and held it over us as a chuppah, as a wedding canopy. That's the happy story. The other story is that God took the mountain, turned it upside down, held it over us, and said, so you want to take my Torah? And if we didn't, God was going to drop it on our heads. So we have the happy and the not so happy version. But we are very much in a relationship with God, and like in any relationship, and it sounds like all of us are in a relationship in this. So we all know, and for those of you who aren't married yet, you will learn very quickly that being in a relationship is all about give and take. It is all about give and take. It's about covenanting yourself to another being or another person and giving them what they need and asking them to give you what you need. And sometimes, by the way, asking someone to give you what you need is even harder than giving them what they need. It's much easier to take care of someone else than it is to take care of yourself. And that's what our relationship with God is. God expects certain things from us, and we have a right and an obligation to expect certain things from God. I was doing leading a discussion the other day about prayer, the other night actually, about prayer, and I was asking people, what do their prayers look like? And someone said that their prayers look mostly like offering thanksgiving, and that they don't feel comfortable kvetching to God about what's wrong and what's bothering them. And I was really struck by that a lot of Jews, I think, are uncomfortable kvetching to God. And that's a real problem, I think, because we have needs. We need to understand why bad things happen to us. We need to ask those questions. We need to be angry when the world doesn't seem fair to us. That's part of the covenant that we have with God. That's part of the relationship that we started forming with God 3,000 years ago at Mount Sinai. And when we don't ask God for what we need, when we don't demand that God participate in our lives, then we're really not holding up our end of the bargain. And the flip side is true also. When we don't do what God demands of us, then we're also not holding up our end of the bargain. So what does God demand of us? Well, that will be for a couple weeks from now, I think. Let me look. It's yeah, that's not for a while. We'll get to that later. But the short answer is mitzvot, commandments. I usually translate mitzvot as moments of or opportunities for commandment and connection. That God gave us these commandments that God wants us to do, and that's our end of the bargain. Now, the question is, what are the commandments? Like, what do we actually have to do? Do we have to keep kosher? Do we have to observe Shabbat? Are we allowed to work on Saturdays? Do we have to go to services on Yom Kippur? There's a lot of debate. There's a lot of debate around that, about what does God actually want us to do? And that sort of brings us back, actually, to what I suggested before, that Torah and Jewish tradition is a combination of God's voice and our filter. And so we don't know exactly what God wants from us. The best we can do is try and understand what God wants from us by studying text and learning with other people and looking at the world around us and seeing how we can participate in repairing the world. The best we can do is make a concerted effort to try and understand what God wants from us. And the honest truth is that different people understand that differently. Orthodox Jews understand that God wants them to not mix wool and linen in their clothing. And conservative Jews believe that God wants them to work every day to balance their secular lives with their religious lives. And Reform Jews believe that God wants them to repair the world. And Reconstructionist Jews believe that God wants them to build communities that have shared purpose and shared faith and shared practices. Zionists believe that God wants them to build up the land of Israel, although they probably wouldn't say that God wants them to do anything. I don't know. You can chime in on that, David. But secular Israelis, right? That's a whole wonderful, interesting subset of Jews, secular Israelis, because they don't practice, they don't call themselves religious, but they'll say Shabbat Shalom to you every Friday afternoon. Right? It's fantastic. So what we make of and what we do with our end of the bargain, with our piece of that relationship that we're in with God, that's really up for debate, and that's for each of you to decide for yourselves. I think that if I were king of the world, and if I could sort of give everybody what I thought was most important about this relationship with God, it wouldn't be the specifics. I wouldn't say to people, you should pray 3 times a day, or you should keep kosher, or you should build a sukkah. It wouldn't be any of that. It would be to allow people to feel obligated. We live in a radically democratized world, and I think that many people, myself, I'll just speak about myself. It's very hard for me to feel obligated to do anything other than my job and to my family. Right? If I want to buy a song, I don't have to buy the whole album anymore. I can stream it on Spotify. Heck, I can find it for free on YouTube. I don't even have to pay it for it anymore. I don't feel obligated. We don't have obligation in our lives much anymore. My kids are proof of that, because they don't have to do a damn thing in my house. And Judaism is all about obligation. It's all about living up to the obligations that we feel God wants from us. And we've lost that a little bit. And so if I could give one thing to Jews, it would be how to find that sense of obligation again and not have it feel burdensome, because that's the other problem, is that it's everything we do in Judaism, it's just so depressing. Young families who don't do anything all year long, young Jewish families, will bring their kids to Yom Kippur. That boggles my mind. Why would you bring your kids to Yom Kippur? It's the longest, most boring thing we do all year. Bring them to Purim. Bring them to Simchat Torah. Bring them to something fun. What we intentionally choose to do the worst, most boring stuff. And I think that in part that's because obligation, the only way that we know to be obligated is that it should feel heavy, that it should feel burdensome. In Judaism, we talk about the yoke of heaven, the yoke of the commandments, right? When we say the yoke, we're talking about a literal yoke that we put on cattle. That's not what it has to be. Obligation can be uplifting. It can be joyous. It can be enlightening. So if I could help us find one thing to bring back into our relationship with God, it would be that. It would be that this sense of joyous obligation. Let me stop for a second, because I told you I didn't want to talk the whole time, and that's all I've done. So thoughts, questions, anything, throw it in there. What are you thinking about? What are you hearing? What questions do you have? What's intriguing you?
Well, I thought the point you made about obligation is very interesting because to me, obligation also is sort of a point to things. There's like a reason why we do things as opposed to it just being a burden. And, I think it embeds a reason. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but
That's beautiful. So, there are two kinds of commandments according to traditional Judaism. There are chukim, which are laws, and mishpatim, which are also laws, but they're different kind of laws. But the difference between the two is that mishpatim are laws that have reasons. So things like don't murder, right? We get that. That has a reason, right? We actually could have come up with that one on our own. There are other laws, chukim, like don't eat shellfish or don't mix meat and milk. And people will suggest to you that they know why we don't do those things. They'll say, oh, it's for health reasons, or oh, it's for this. We have no clue why we can't eat shellfish. No idea. There is no reason given at all. And one of the really cool teachings about those laws that have no reasons is that if every law had a reason that we could just kind of come up with on our own, like don't steal, don't murder, then there would really be no need for God. And so in addition to all those laws, God gave us a bunch of other stuff that doesn't make any sense, but we do it because God said so. And that gives it purpose, knowing that these laws didn't just come out of the earth, that they actually have a source, that they have a purpose, that they're part of a larger vision for the world. That's one of the reasons why we have these laws, and to give purpose, exactly what you said. That was beautiful. Anyone else? Chime in. What are you thinking? What are your beliefs about God? Where are you all with God? Do you believe in God?
Yeah.
Kristen, what about you? I want to hear from you. Come on, you're the lone woman on the panel here. You got to chime in. Where are you with God? Do you have a relationship with God?
Not really.
Okay, good.
No.
Okay. Do you think, is there a reason why you think you don't, or is it just, you haven't had the need to, or?
I don't know.
I mean, is there something that turned you off, or is it just, it kind of never came up?
I guess like after my grandfather died, I just stopped really believing.
Really? So before he died, you feel like there was something there?
Yeah.
Wow, okay. So have you heard of the book, Why Bad Things Happen to Good People?
No.
Has anyone on the panel heard of that?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah, so you haven't. None of you have heard of it. Because
I've heard of it.
No, you haven't. Because there is no book called Why Bad No, there is no book called Why Bad Things Happen to Good People. There's a book called When Bad Things Happen to Good People, right? And that's really interesting, actually. Everyone thinks it's called Why Bad Things Happen to Good People. It's called When. It's written by Harold Kushner. Harold Kushner never gives us the answer as to why bad things happen to good people. He just tells us how to struggle through it when bad things happen to good people. And he talks a lot in that book about how, Kristen, I don't want to impose this on you, so I'm projecting a little bit, so feel free to shut me up. But
Okay.
I think a lot of people believe that if someone dies, someone they care about, that either God caused it, or that God could have stopped it and didn't, or they struggle with questions like, why could God let this happen? And when those are the questions we're asking, why did God let this happen? How could God do this? It doesn't surprise me at all that people like Kristen, when something bad happens, say, screw you, God, I'm done with you. Right? Who wants to believe in a God that lets our grandfathers die? Who needs that? Right? And so really what he argues in the book is that we have to start asking different questions. Questions like, why did God let this happen, is really not a helpful question. And he goes a step farther to say that if you're teaching that God allows people to die, then you're setting yourself up for disappointment. If you believe that God lets people die, then you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Now, I will say, and this is just my own personal belief, that I actually do think God lets people die. I believe that everything happens for a reason. I believe God has a plan. And I've had some crap happen in my life. I've had my share of ickiness. I lost a daughter. I had cancer. I've had my share. I believe God does everything for a reason. Like I said before, I have no idea what the reason is. Honestly, I don't want to know what the reason is. That's God's reason. God having a reason doesn't make the pain any less, really. It's still my pain. But I think that perhaps it does allow me to see that there's more to existence than just my pain. That there's something greater than just my pain. So I'm Kristen, thank you for telling us that, because I think that your experience is shared by a lot of people.
Yeah.
When stuff happens, it's really hard to believe in God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would encourage you to try and I don't know when this happened, but I would encourage you to try and think back and ask yourself and challenge yourself with, okay, well, if God wasn't the one taking my grandfather's life, then where was God when that happened? God had to be somewhere. Where was God? I'll tell you that when I was ordained as a rabbi 1 month after my daughter passed away. And so, and I had to give a speech, because I was being ordained. And so what I said was, as part of my speech, I said, whenever somebody asks me where God is, I'm going to tell them to go to the 9th floor of Children's Hospital and ask for a nurse named Cece. We had a nurse that was taking care of my daughter named Cece. Cece Waite was her name. And she had this amazing ability to be completely present and yet totally invisible. When we didn't want her there, it was like she wasn't in the room. And yet, before we even asked for something, she was right there for us. And I am absolutely convinced that God was in her when all this was happening. And so, if you're looking for God, go to the 9th floor of Children's Hospital in Boston and ask for a nurse named Cece. Right? I believe that God was there when your grandfather died. The question is, where? And can you find it? Can you see God in that? Brandon, where are you on God?
I've come back and forth many times in my life. Obviously you know this part, but for everybody else, it's like I spent 7 years as a practicing Buddhist, and in college and after college, and for me it was sort of, I've always been sort of a seeker of spiritually, and then sort of looking for an answer, and whether that was God or something else. And as I've gotten older, sort of come more to the I don't know if you want to call it the God of small things, but sort of the God in everything but also nothing, which I think is probably one of those very Buddhist concepts that I sort of kept with me. But I think for me it's sort of the idea that God is both everywhere and nowhere, and sort of both again in the minutia of life, but also just sort of a bemused observer at best. And so sort of I've come to sort of accept, yes, there is God. No, God doesn't make my car start in the morning, and doesn't get me a promotion, but that God sort of like you say, like you've been saying about how God has a plan. It's like as my life has gone on, it's become sort of more and more obvious to me that something's in the works. Whether it's good, bad, or otherwise, it's just my life has been leading me to certain points, and how I get there hasn't always been sort of easy or convenient, but it sure seems to have been a logical flow to it, looking at it from the reverse. So
yeah, one of my friends that I learn with talks. She imagines that we are all down in a valley, and there are lots of paths. Yeah, Brandon knows what I'm talking about. There are lots of paths in this valley. God is up on top of the mountain looking down. So we have no idea where we're going, but because God has a different vantage point, because God can see all the paths and where they all go, God knows how we're going to get where we need to go. Because God knows that there's a blockade there and there's a ditch over there. We can't see it from where we are, but God seems to have that vantage point. So I want to wrap us up for today because I've already kept you an hour. I just want to say one other thing that I said before that all of us were at Mount Sinai, that we all had this revelatory experience. One of the things that implies is, or one of the things that might imply, is that God chose Jews. And this is another one of those ideas in Judaism that can cause a lot of controversy. So much so that in the Reconstruction of Movement, which was founded by a guy named Mordechai Kaplan, in their prayer book, they actually took out all the references to us being chosen. And there are references to us being chosen all over the prayer book. Every time we read from the Torah, from the Bible, the blessing before says, Bachar Banu, that we were chosen. So we're not going to get into it now. We can start with it next time if you want. But this idea that we were chosen by God, or, and this is how I would flip it, that we chose God. That we chose to be Jewish. We chose to express in one God in this unique way and following this unique path. And that maybe the chosenness is not from God to us, but in ways are choosing to be Jewish every single day. So I think that we should stop for today. Yes? Is that good? Is that okay?
Yeah.
So listen, I really need your feedback on what worked, what didn't work. So we're not meeting again until I believe it's the 13th of October because of the holidays. So we've got a good month, right? So in the interim, and you'll get reminders about the next webinar, but in the interim, if things come to mind, questions, if you didn't like the format, if you want me to do something different, please, 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 please tell me. I want this to be responsive. I want it to work for you. There were some more people that signed up that didn't join us today, so we may have people kind of popping in and out as we go, and we'll take it as we go. We'll go from there. So I want to wish all of you guys Shana Tova, a happy and sweet New Year. I hope that wherever you are, you're able to carve out some time to feel chosen and to choose and to see if God's voice is speaking to you a little bit louder this year than it may have in the past. So with that, I think I'll say Laila Tov, good night. Yeah?
Laila Tov, Todah. Good night.
All right.
Good night, Rabbi.
Have
Thank
a
you.
wonderful rest of the night, everyone. Take care.
We'll see you at services.
Oh,
for
are you
Rosh
coming
Hashanah.
in, Brandon?
We're coming to Florida for the holiday.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy to see you.
Excellent.
All right.
We'll see you
Fantastic.
soon.
Take
Thank
care,
you,
everyone.
Bye, Rabbi.
Bye-bye.